Good afternoon. As most of us probably know, there is a lot of tension in America right now on the topic of racism. Today, I'm going to touch on a few specific points, such as the continued police brutality and racism in our country, racism's role in our education systems, and the defund the police campaigns that are going on right now. According to Cassandra Chaney from Racism and Police Brutality in America in 2013, police brutality is defined as excessive physical force or verbal assault and psychological intimidation used on a person. Racism and police brutality has specifically been brought to light in the recent months due to all the protests and all that's happening. A lot of what we're seeing today is a repeat of what's already happened in the past. The difference now is that people are feeling okay to speak out about it. A quote from Ray Robinson from Racism and Police Brutality in America in 2013 says, "Police brutality is not a new phenomenon. The Department of Justice and the Office of Civil Rights have investigated more than a dozen police departments in major cities across the United States on allegations of ethical or racial discrimination and police brutality." Now that I have talked a little about racism and police brutality happening now and in the past, I'd like to move on to how racism is being handled in our school systems. Systemic racism is evident in a lot of different areas in our society. School, sports, work, and getting a loan are a few that immediately come to my mind. In light of recent events such as protests brought on by the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, more colleges are beginning to educate students on systemic racism and the effects that it has on our society. Sarah Wood says, diverse issues of higher education in 2020, that as protests continue across the country after the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor at the hands of police officers, universities are analyzing their own biases and implementing initiatives and conversations on campus for future semesters to address systemic racism and police brutality. Educating our future generations on racism's role in our country will hopefully lead them in the right direction morally and help them to be better people in the future. According to Kelly Taylor in After Crisis Opportunity 2020, students in Baltimore demanded that Maryland schools include anti-racism education. Now that I have discussed racism's role in our education systems, I'd like to move on to my final point, which is the defund the police campaigns that are happening currently. The standpoint of defund the police has been adopted by individuals of all ethnic backgrounds all over the country. A quote from Nicholas Baudry from Defund the Police, an important movement for society and psychiatry, 2020, says, "The death of Mr. Floyd was certainly not a lone incident. In 2019, 1,098 people were killed by those tasked with protecting us. These statistics are frightening, and they're pushing more people to the defund the police viewpoint because they're wanting that money to be used for better resources." Ian Loader in To Reduce the Harm on Defunding the Police 2020 says that American policing is not oriented around crime prevention and public safety, but actually racialized control to keep black people in order and black people in their place. The Defund the Police campaigns will continue until real justice is delivered to everyone who has been mistreated by the police. In conclusion, the effects of this systemic racism and police brutality aren't going to be vanishing overnight. They're going to be felt for a long time. Each of us plays a vital role and a personal role in putting an end to racism in this country. We went over police brutality in recent months with the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. We touched on how schools and universities are beginning to educate students further on these matters. And we learned that the Defund the Police campaigns started because of the overbearing feeling that police wasn't set up for public safety or for crime prevention, but for actually racial control. I hope that today I was able to supply you with some new information that you can use to spread the knowledge of racism and how it's affecting us. These problems will not vanish overnight, like I said before, but it all starts with us. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening.